So after 10 long years, we have finally received a new college football game. Personally, the last one that I played was NCAA Football 2013, the one with RG3 on the cover. As a former football player myself, as soon as I heard there was another one of these games releasing after so long, I immediately had to get it. But that brings up the question, with such a long hiatus from the last title, would EA be able to recapture everything that made the past game so memorable? Well, in my opinion, they got pretty close. Let's start off with the main attraction for this game, the gameplay. If you have played a college football game before, or pretty much any football game for that matter, then you understand the basic foundation of how to play. You just pick a play and run it. Extremely simple. But it's when you look at the gameplay from a wider lens is where you can spot the differences. First off, the way the game feels is incredible. I played countless iterations of NCAA and Madden and they don't feel like this. Just executing runs or throwing the ball feels really smooth and stable. Moving the analog stick doesn't take too much force and feels really natural. Because of this, the angles are hard to get right. This pertains specifically to defense, as trying to line up your defender to tackle the opposing offensive player is actually challenging. It's like the movement is so realistic that you can't tackle anybody in the open field. So defensively, the only thing I've been able to do to sort of combat this is to wait till the defender gets real close to the player to select them and then just tackle. If I try to use a defender that's got some separation instead, then most of the time I'll end up overshooting the receiver or running back and they'll end up taking it to the house. Even with my struggles regarding angles, the running, jumping, throwing, and tackling animations are all realistic. Everything mimics how players actually get hit in real life. If you decide to purchase this game, the first thing you're going to notice is how it feels, and this game nails it in that department. Another thing worth mentioning is the play selection. Depending on which school you're playing with, there's a plethora of plays to choose from. What I loved was experimenting with different styles for each team and discovering what works best with each of them. I'm not gonna lie though, at first I just used the coach suggestions for every play on both offense and defense, but eventually I realized that the coach play suggestions was getting me cooked, especially on defense. So because of that, I ended up practicing and actually trying to understand who I had on my team and what personnel worked best. In my opinion, I think the RPO works really well once you get the hang of it. At first, it may seem a bit difficult because you have to understand which play you're running in RPO, as you have to manually press a button to hold the ball. So with some RPO plays, you do have to press it, while others you don't. But once you get the hang of it, it's just a matter of reading what the defenders are doing. If I had to say what type of play caller I would say I was more of a run first type of play caller. For some reason, I think it's really easy to throw interceptions, so I just predicated my game on the running attack and focused on pounding the ball each and every down. This may not work for you depending on the team you're playing with, but since Florida State has a good running game, I was cool. Regardless, I advise you to actually run through different plays and learn what works, because relying on the coach suggestions isn't going to get you anywhere. Coinciding along with the movement is the overall presentation. Before even starting a game, you notice how much attention to detail is put in for each team. Just starting with the opening menu, you get a sense of the tradition or pride that comes with the team you preset as your favorite team. Obviously mine is Florida State, but they all look great. Once you boot up a game, the sequences throughout it are beautiful. The intro does a great job at showing how each team actually leaves the tunnel on game day. If you've watched any college football game, then you know exactly how your favorite team arrives onto the field, and this game accurately depicted this. I thought the layout of the scoreboard was done well, but I think the lack of ESPN branding in this game does hurt it a bit. From the replays to the halftime show, they're nice, but a little bare bones. I'm not saying they're bad, but I think it could have been so much better. When it comes to presentation specifically, I always return to one of the greatest football games ever made, NFL 2K5. Just look at how the presentation is for a 2005 game. Why couldn't EA recreate this sort of halftime show with an actual analyst saying some generic info about the game or what's going on within the league? They sort of do this in between the kickoffs, as they'll mention something that's happening with a different game, but it's not nearly on the same level. That brings me to another idea that I don't understand why hasn't been implemented yet, and that's live cutouts or video of another game. Like, they describe what's going on, but why not have a small square in the corner showing a gameplay clip of an important play for that game? That would add so much more to the immersion. And just like all the other presentation options, if you didn't want to see it, you could just hold down a button to skip over it. Little changes like this could take the presentation for this game to a whole other level. But even still, what we got is solid. The graphics showing the stats, crowd, and team all look nice and give off a professional tone. To sum it up, each individual game has its own distinct feel and look to it, creating an atmosphere that can only be seen on Saturdays. In regards to the actual game modes, the first I wanted to look at was Dynasty. Personally, Dynasty is the mode that I always put the most time into ever since I was a kid. It's just too much fun choosing any team you want and leading them all the way to the national championship. However, this game adds so much more to Dynasty than the games from the past. The first thing that I noticed was the addition of the custom conferences if you don't like how the current college conference system is set up. Then you can create your coach. Whether you choose to be a head coach, offensive coordinator, or defensive coordinator, you can start out as whatever you want. I do think that the creation aspect of your coach was a bit lacking. Compared to Road to Glory, there's barely any customization options for your coach. You have a choice of 2 outfits, and overall it's just generic. Maybe EA thought nobody would care about how a coach would look, but if you can add all this stuff to the players, I want my coach to look just as nice. It doesn't have to be to the level of an RPG, but they should add more than just a long sleeve as an additional piece of clothing. Let us wear a hoodie, t-shirt, visors, anything really. But with you playing the game and the camera constantly cutting to your coach, it would have been nice to have them look a bit better. Once you start up the Dynasty, the biggest change that caught my attention was the recruiting. Recruiting players to your team actually requires consistent effort, as you have to evaluate your team needs and compare them to what potential recruits are available. But even then, it's not that easy, because depending on the school you picked, it will be easier or harder to land the top recruits. For example, I used the Louisiana Raging Cajuns for my Dynasty, and most of the time I was only able to land 3-star recruits, with the exception of 1 or 2 4-stars. What I thought was cool was the entire concept of getting the players. After adding a player to your recruiting board, you could then choose different actions in an effort to recruit them. This could be contacting them via social media, getting in touch with friends and family, but whatever you choose, it all helps in landing that specific person. Again, I loved how it was balanced, as you couldn't do everything for one player, as you have a certain number of points that you could allocate for that specific player. It's simple, but it made sense, as you have to think about every choice before you make it. And when all is said and done, you can finally offer a scholarship as the icing on the cake for that potential recruit. The entire recruiting process makes Dynasty feel more alive than ever before. Of course, you can skip the recruiting and just advance to the next week, but that takes away from the whole experience. Since this upcoming football season is the first to have the new playoff bracket, it was really cool to see how your team fit in the playoff race. Whether you're the first seed or the last seed, it felt so natural to go through some sort of normal playoff system instead of just trying to be top 4 in the rankings, just so you could try to qualify for a playoff game. I thought the way everything was organized made it really easy to find everything you were looking for. Like when the bowl season came up, you could find all the bowl games quickly, seeing what team made which bowl. The same thing goes for the individual trophies too, as being able to select each type of trophy and see all the finalists for the award was convenient. What's even cooler is monitoring a certain award over the course of the season and seeing one of your players slowly climb up the rankings until they're the top pick to get that award. When it comes to Dynasty mode, this is where I put in the majority of my time playing this game and will be the main mode I return to for multiple playthroughs. Choosing a school to completely rebuild or just enhance and attempting to win the national title never gets old. The other mode I wanted to mention was Road to Glory. When starting out, you have the choice of what type of recruit you want to be. I was tempted to be an underdog, but something told me to just be elite, and I'm so glad I did. In my opinion, everything is just easier as an elite recruit, which it should be since that means you're a 5-star athlete. Either way, if you want to start out actually playing and not riding the bench, choose to be an elite athlete. Now, unlike Dynasty, I think the player customization was done a hell of a lot better. There is so much that you can customize, from hair, skin color, cleats, gloves, shoulder pads, and more. The amount of options for each piece of your body is actually crazy. Normally you would think there might be like 3 or 4 choices depending on what it is, but there's at least like 10 different customization options for each piece of clothing. This amount of customization made it possible to create a player that resembles you or the person you had in mind. It still boggles my mind why EA decided to put so much effort into this character customization, but not the coaching. I understand your player is more important, but still. When you actually choose the school you want to attend, this is where the mode opens up. Right from the start, you actually feel like a student athlete. I loved how you actually had a to-do list that needed to be finished every week that would affect you. Like during the week, you have the options to study, be a part of the community, improve your health, and more. But what's cool is that you only get so many points to allocate to each of these. So if you neglect something like studying, you'll be at risk for failing your next exam. Add in the text from companies offering NIL deals and students asking you to party or do things outside of football, and this game does a solid job at replicating the life of a college athlete. Personally, the only thing I didn't really care for was practice. Depending on the position you chose, that will earn you skill points and improve your relationship with your coach, improving your overall level and giving you the ability to pick plays. These are cool at first, but after you run through these a handful of times, they start to get old quick. Even when I played football, I didn't like practice, so I'm not surprised I didn't like it in the game either. Nonetheless, if you're struggling with the mechanics at your position or trying to battle for a position, then you may enjoy these. Something that confused me a bit was the lack of positions that you could choose from. When starting Road to Glory, you can choose from quarterback, running back, receiver, middle linebacker, and cornerback. I didn't come into this thinking that you could choose any position and be able to play anywhere on the field, but the amount of positions there are a little sparse. I think if you could play a safety, kicker, punter, in a position along the offense and defensive line, then that would have been perfect. It may seem a bit mundane to play as a kicker, but with the way the kicking works in this game, it could be really interesting. Like every kick would be an actual challenge, not just a chip shot. Hopefully in the next game we'll get more positions available for this mode. In regards to the actual gameplay for Road to Glory, it reminded me of how it used to be. You play from the viewpoint of your specific player and you can't really control what happens on every single play, unless you're the quarterback. When I played this mode I created a running back, so it was cool to get the ball without starting directly as the quarterback. Even though the running back may be one of the easier positions to play with, it still wasn't that easy to pop off during a game. Many times I would have to overcome poor blocking or bad execution on my part to provide anything meaningful for that particular game. This seems like an insurmountable issue, but all this does is reinforce the fact that the entire season really is a grind and you're not going to be the man right from the first snap, unless you're playing on rookie. Either way, this mode does a great job at making you put in the work to get to where you want to be. In the end, I enjoyed Road to Glory, but when compared to Dynasty, I don't think I'll be returning to it as much as that mode. I just like playing as a whole team too much. Overall, EA Sports College Football 25 is a great return to an iconic franchise that all of us football fans have been missing. From the normal exhibition to Dynasty to Road to Glory, all of these modes are fun to play and give us that authentic college football experience that we've been missing for all these years. Even as good as this game is, it can be a lot better, and with some tweaks, I'm willing to bet the future installments of these games will be light years ahead of this one. For those reasons, I'm going to give this game an 8.5. There is so much to like about this game that I can see myself coming back to this long after this upcoming football season is ended. If EA actually listens to the feedback from us fans and updates this game accordingly, this year's college football title will only improve. I'm interested to see what changes the devs make for next year's game and how certain aspects of that game are improved from this year's. For a game that was in development for the last 4 years, EA Sports College Football 2025 was definitely worth the wait. If you played this game, what did you think about it? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to check out one of my other reviews right here.